Welcome to Boardroom to Bedroom, the podcast that helps you negotiate your best life and stop missing out because, let's face it, all of life is a negotiation. If you're looking to live your life on purpose and with purpose and to get what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom, you've come to the right place. We've got you covered. This is where expert and novice negotiators alike come to up-level their game and get more out of life. With your host, award-winning author, attorney, international speaker, and master negotiator, Cindy Watson.
Welcome to another episode of The Art of Feminine Negotiation. I'm your host, Cindy Watson, and I am really excited today to introduce you to Sheila Mac. Welcome, Sheila. It's so great to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you so much. I appreciate being invited to the show.
Well, you guys are in for a treat out there. Today, we're going to be talking about how to renegotiate, reinvent, and reboot your work life commitments on your terms. So I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you. She's got this innate ability to find that glimmer of light in even the darkest of situations, and that really sets her apart. And it's been her mission for a while now to help women find that light as well. Along with speaking, teaching online courses, and coaching, she's been a property investor and a real estate team leader in Beverly Hills, no less. And her new book, Bootstraps Bra Straps, Sheila shows up for all the women who have shown up over and over again for other people in their lives and now need someone to show up for them. Does that sound familiar to all of you out there? So Sheila, I gotta say, I love the title of your new book. Tell us a little bit about what the inspiration for the book was.
Well, the inspiration. In life, we all have waves. You remember the Ventura fire that we had in 2017 in California?
Yeah.
Well, I had just purchased a brand new home. Finally, after traveling for about 7 years straight and working full time, and I save up and put a big deposit. Well, I bought the home November 3rd, and December 3rd, it burned down with all my belongings. One of my 6 children crashed my car. And so within like 4 days, I had literally gone from the top of the world to how you design your house and make it perfect. I was just getting ready to move in. I hadn't even slept there yet.
Oh, I did not know this about you, Sheila. Oh my gosh. So carry on.
It was so difficult. And I had a little prefab home that was like a cabin home up in the canyons in California. Yeah. And I was able to go stay there, but I had divided it and rented it out on a vacation rental site. So there was a little shed on the side that was 400 square feet. And I was like, this is kind of nicer than the shelter.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this little 400 square foot room and I'm thinking, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
And over a few days, I felt depression or, that heaviness come in. And I thought, okay, this is where all this personal development, training and work I've done all these years. Now I've got to work on myself.
Yeah.
And I started doing the rebounder and saying affirmations. I ended up borrowing a beater car from one of my kids that kind of drove sideways. You roll up the windows. It was really I did this thing where I go to the dollar store and I got the little stickers and I put them in the car and I made a pretty little steering wheel cover and did all these things. And I said, oh, you really souped this up. And I said, that's right. If it's going to be a beater car, it is going to be the best beater car.
I love that attitude.
I had been working in real estate for like 28 years already, but I was doing an online course. So I was teaching that and I got invited to the Beverly Hills office. So that's when, because of that switch, in my mind, I was able to get the invite. And then within a month, I had moved to Beverly Hills. And then about a month later, I was able to get a new car, replacement with commissions, all these things. So I go back to that house, that little cabin. So I got back and I did my formula and wrote it out. And I thought, I felt really alone. Everybody else obviously was dealing with the same situation. Now that kind of equates to where we are at this year with our worldwide pandemic. We're all in the same situation.
Yeah.
I felt kind of alone and I thought, oh my gosh, I got this formula. I know how this works. And I can imagine that there's other people who really could use a roadmap, a guidebook on how to get back on track quickly, and also a community of friends. And so I created a community for people to connect when they're rebooting and reinventing their life. And I also wrote the book. So that was the birth of the book.
I love that. And it's funny, I feel like you're such a kindred spirit, Sheila, because as soon as I read as well about you that finding that glimmer of light and wanting to help other women find it, when COVID hit, I had a very similar experience in terms of that reaction about people needing to be able to find that light. So I started doing Facebook Lives and then eventually just felt really compelled to write this book called Negotiate from Fear to Powerful Resilience. So I totally love and respect and admire what you did. Tell us what we can expect from the book.
Well, the book goes into various engaging stories about myself and other people that I've worked with and friends and what I've experienced of people going through tough situations and getting back on track. And so it'll go through the grieving process and how to get back on track, going through those stages of grieving and getting back on track. It goes through divorce, relationships, how to renegotiate in your relationship and get back on track with that. It goes into parenting. And there's a point in our lives where we end up parenting our parents, and that's our elder care situation that happens. And this year it's happened more than ever.
Yeah.
That we're caring for both our adult children that have moved home due to this situation and universities being closed and caring for our parents. And so I get into that in the book. And really, I didn't know this whole year was going to happen.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. I love the concept of it. And I can't wait till I look forward to reading it myself. And like I say, I've been following some of your stuff online as well. I love the message. I think it's so powerful. So what do you think, Sheila, what do you find are some of the biggest obstacles that are holding women back these days?
Well, I think that now more than ever, we have to figure out how to really negotiate our business and our home life, whether you work for someone else or you're an entrepreneur, you work for yourself. Now we've ended up having to bring some of our work or all of our work home. And we may have those elders or children or others that are also working at home, either studying online or what have you. And as a manager of our business and of our home, it gives us a dilemma. So we have to reinvent how we're going through that. And going through the B.O.O.T.S formula, it's about who you're being. The first B in the B.O.O.T.S formula is for being. It's about who you're being and all you're doing. And who you used to be last year before this pandemic hit is not who you need to be now. So who do you need to show up as now in your home and career that's going to make a big difference? Because either on a Zoom call or in your home, your family, your employees, your coworkers, they're going to feel the energy that you bring to your meetings and to everything that you're doing. As you lead, you're going to lead through how you show up and who you're being.
I love this. Oh my gosh, the synchronicity is just crazy. I saw Brendan Burchard and I do this exercise as well with my clients. I ask them to pick 3 words that describe how they want to show up in the world. Like, what do you want to be seen as? And it's amazing how few people do that. They really stumble and struggle, but it is such an eye-opening exercise to really get intentional about how you want to show up generally. And even as you say, like the difference, something as simple as if you're coming home from work and as before you come into your home, although now the two of them are merged more, but just having that intentional switch about, okay, how do I want to show up when I walk through this door, whether it's going into a big meeting in that boardroom door or showing up into your bedroom with your intimate partner. Who do you want to show up with and making those choices more with intention? So I love that. So I was going to ask you to share your B.O.O.T.S formula, sort of the recipe with us. I know you can't obviously give us the whole book here, but you started with the B, which I love, who you're being, which is gorgeous. What else is it?
So going back to the house fire. So the next thing is the first O in the B.O.O.T.S formula is for orientation. So it's not better than it is. It's not worse than it is, but this is what it is. This is where I find myself. This is my new orientation. So you have to know where you are at realistically on the map. This year, we can equate it to our business plans, our 2020 goals at the beginning of the year have had to change based on the new reality. Yes. And then we decide what our new goals and outcomes are based on that reality. You have to be really honest about that and not go with what used to be real, because this is where we're at now. So that's the orientation. And the next O is for order of operations. And that's where once you know these 2 pieces, you're able to say, okay, in what order do I need to do things? For me, I needed to get out of debt, get a new car so that I could take not a new car, but a nicer car, take my clients out to see properties and work with my team. And so I needed to go in a certain order. I couldn't just move to Beverly Hills in a day. I had to take all these steps to get back on track. And then the next letter is T for thinking. So that's our mindset. That's where those stickers in the car, making everything as beautiful, even in the environment and the situations we find ourselves in. You've had to move home. It may be that you rearrange and make your den or another room into a special office or place you can go and meditate, or where the kids can study. And so you might have to reinvent those things to keep the thinking and mindset really clear and positive, and make sure that you stop and have playtime and fun time with your family during this very serious situation you're going through. And the next is then S is for stepping up. So that's when you put all these together on your map and you start stepping into the little actions, like little changes, even just switching your rooms around in your house and making your environment beautiful, are going to affect every area of your life. So that's stepping into it one small step at a time.
I love this blueprint. This is genius, Sheila. It's so simple and easy to remember. And I haven't heard it spoken about in quite this way, but which is really interesting because it's tough, I think, to bring a unique perspective sometimes. And I love this idea about that orientation and then the order, because I've been having that debate with my son recently a lot. It's like, I get you've got these great ideas and you want to end up here, but what are the steps to get you there, right? I love this concept. Decide who you want to show up as, your being, your orientation, the order, get that mindset in order, and then step into it. I think that's beautiful. So can I ask, when you talked about stickers, just to clarify for our listeners out there, are you talking about like stickers with inspirational sayings, mindset, or do you mean like just stickers literally to visually beautify the space, or both?
You know, it could be either. For me, I had lost everything in that few days. So I went to the dollar store like a rock, and I bought the beautiful stickers that say happiness and focus and blessed and flow. And I put those little stickers all over the inside visor of the car so that while I'm driving this really awful, I mean, it was embarrassing. It drove to the side. It was bad, and it needed more work than it was worth, obviously, to even get it up to the right level to drive safely. But so those stickers, it was like the mindset. And it was funny because in that little area, in that little canyon house, was a lot of other people going through things, and they all looked at me like I had lost my mind with my car, and I'm putting on beautiful music, and I'm jumping on my rebounder and doing affirmations, and they're like, she's crazy.
I love it.
Well, let's stay in this state of, and when I returned a little bit over a month later, and I had already got a new car and had lots of commissions and success and was moving to Beverly Hills, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're still in the exact same place I left them.
Oh, what a powerful message is that. My goodness. And I just love that not only were you able to pull yourself up through the power of the mindset and following that blueprint, but now you're out there being able to share that message with other women in the world, which I think is just a gorgeous sort of full circle. What would you say is the key sort of starting point to renegotiate your life? You literally had to start back from ground zero in some ways. What would you say is the key to starting that?
It goes to community. It goes to asking for help when you need it and connecting to other people, so that you don't feel alone as you go through this reinvention and rebooting, renegotiating process in your life. That's so helpful. Now, when I was 3 or 4 years old, 5 years old, my grandmother was raising me at that time, and she had all these other women. This is Los Angeles area. So we had women in her age group from all over the world. I had a lady that had gone through a concentration camp and lost her whole family. Wow. She's in her 70s or somewhere. So that's the age range of these ladies. They all ran businesses. They were all beautiful, incredible business women. They never lost their feminine. And they had these stories. I had another lady, her and her husband had to leave the country because it got taken over by a different ruler. And they had to start from scratch, not even knowing the language. And another lady from Greece, her husband passed away, and she ended up continuing to run these restaurants, these Greek restaurants that were very famous in Los Angeles. Back then, that whole mental thought about you can't run a business if you're a woman. And so these were beautiful women. And I thought, oh my gosh, they made it. These beautiful stoic women, they made it through the waves of life. And I realized everybody in that group they supported each other. They didn't care about different religions, different cultures. They came together, they supported each other, they shared their stories, and they made it. And I thought, oh, okay, in life, we're all going to have waves. Everybody that is listening to this now is going through what we're going through as a world together right now, regarding the pandemic and also the racial adjustments and equality that everybody's working so hard toward. And so with that, these are our times together in a community. It can really make a difference in how we get back on track quickly as women. So that's why I did create a community. I have a Facebook group, Bootstraps Bra Straps, that everybody's welcome to join. And that actually is a way for us to connect and share as we go through our journey this year and get back to renegotiating our life on our terms.
I love that idea about connection as well. Again, I think people really undervalue just how important that is. And I think as women, a couple of things that come up from what you were just saying that I'd love you to touch on. And one is about that, you know, I made a note about keeping your feminine, because you made a point of mentioning about these strong women and, you know, having these businesses at a time when that wasn't the norm, and even in non-traditional industries where women typically didn't succeed. What role and how important do you think it is for women to be able to keep that feminine or recognize the strength in their feminine power?
You know, I think about how everybody's unique, and some of us are more in our masculine than our feminine just because that's who we are. And so being authentic and showing up as who you are is going to make all the difference, not attempting to fit someone else's shoes, because nobody can show up the way you can in your industry and field. That's important. And then just seeing those women, they were able to, maybe because that was a requirement back then, but they really were able to lead huge companies. My grandmother had over 200 employees. Every day she was in charge. She'd step in there and she had her beautiful little dress and everything, you know, very feminine. She was in charge. She was the boss. There was absolutely no doubt. And she didn't have to act other than who she is.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something I really push as well. I love it's all about the authenticity, right? Because there's no one way to be like people. My program is the art of feminine negotiation. And I often get challenged about, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be feminine, right? And the thing I always reinforce is there's no one way to be feminine. And that's the point. So long as you're being whatever is authentic and real and raw for you, and wherever your source of power is, that's the key. There's no one way to be a woman, no one way to be a man, no one way to be in feminine energy or masculine energy, so long as you're not trying to be something else. And I do think for a long time, I think the world sort of shit where there was so much emphasis and value put on what would be considered traditionally masculine traits. And I don't mean from a gender base. I'm talking masculine versus feminine energies as opposed to sex or gender differences. And I think a lot of women ended up stepping away from what would have been a natural, authentic feminine power because they felt that the only way to succeed was to adopt that more masculine energy. And I include myself. I've got to say it took a long time to recognize, but as a young woman starting in the practice of law, especially I was in a male-dominated niche within a male-dominated industry, and I quickly believed and bought into that myth that the only way to be heard, the only way to be taken seriously was to take no prisoners, to just be scrappier, to get a little tougher. And I think a lot of women have fallen into that trap as well and show up in ways that isn't authentic to them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a lot of frustration from males who are like, hey, wait a minute, where did my feminine woman go? And even in the work environment, we need to show up as who we are with our strengths, because that's the other side of what's needed. There's the polarity and the masculine and the feminine coming together, and each side makes it a more powerful company or situation that you're working in. And so it's really important to just show up with who you really are. And it's funny because the more you do that, the less you'll want to do anything other than showing your true self.
That is so true. I love that. That is powerful, Sheila. I love that. And I feel like we got out of balance. So I think it's interesting that you say it because it's true. I mean, even Google has done a lot of studies as well. And it's those differences when we all bring the same energy, and whether it's based on feminine, masculine, or cultural backgrounds, or introvert versus extrovert, the strength, those teams that performed the best were the ones that had the tension of some diversity within their group. So I think we got out of balance where we so started overvaluing competition and money and winning over, and we sort of lost some of that feminine balance. Now, when people talk about the rise of the feminine, I think a lot of people see that as an anthem for, it's women's time to take over. And for me, it's like, no, this is a time to respect and recognize bringing things into balance so that we honor those feminine strengths. Frankly, whether they show up in a man or a woman, that we honor getting that balance again. What's been your experience of that?
Well, I have a whole chapter on self-care and reinventing your life on your terms. The reason I bring that up is because when we talk about how at a certain point, a lot of women getting into male dominant fields, let's say, like we just had to change who they were. So it's kind of like you're rejecting a huge part of who you showed up as.
Yeah.
And all the beautiful gifts about that. And so that learning to love yourself and show up as who you are is going to make all the difference, even as a mom, as a parent, as somebody caring for your loved ones in a relationship, showing up in the power of being a woman and loving who that is and saying, this is who I am showing up as. If you're more masculine or feminine, it doesn't matter. It's how you're showing up, being who you truly are, that's going to get you the most respect and success in your business. And you don't have to pretend, reject a part of yourself. So imagine our children at home, if you're rejecting a part of your gift or your feminine or other parts of you, your children will learn how to do that. And nobody would want that for their children.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I'm so glad you touched on this. I think that's beautiful, the way that you framed it, by the way, and it's true. When we show up in, again, whether it's that masculine or feminine, when it's not authentic to us, there is a heavy price that comes with that. It's like a little toxic something that leaches into other parts of your life as well, right? It starts affecting, if you show up differently at work, for example, it starts affecting those professional relationships, then it starts affecting your relationship with your kids, with your intimate partner, and ultimately your very sense of self. It can be so destructive. So I'm really glad that you raised that. And it's funny when you talk about reinventing yourselves, how do you suggest that women do start to reinvent themselves? What do they need to do for that process? Let's say they're having an awakening now and they're at that stage and they're like, okay, I'm ready. Tell me what to do, Sheila. Where do I go?
I think that's the most beautiful part about our universal pause, about going through changes and career shifts, finally getting to that point where you're like, you know what, enough. Now I'm going to reinvent and reboot my life on my terms. So you can go through the formula, but now you're building your life in your authentic truth based on what your core values, life purpose, and mission is. Not what your family said to do, not what your professors might have told you is the right thing to do, or what have you, but what really aligns with who you are, who you showed up as, how you want to be a manager of your home, of your business, and in your community, how you want to show up on your terms. So that's the one thing about this book. It's kind of like a pair of boots or a bra. One size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
So,
that's good. That title is brilliant. It works on so many levels. My goodness.
yeah, so that's what it is. It's like, finally, sometimes when we have a breakdown, it is the breakthrough.
Yeah.
It's key to the breakthrough.
Love that. And you hit on something else I think that's worth coming back and recircling around to, is that idea about expectation. Because I think we all have that in life to a certain extent, whether it's our parents or the education system or mass marketing out there, there are just so many expectations that are imposed. For women in particular, I think even so much more so many women reach a certain point in their life where they feel, I think, that they've lost a sense of purpose and passion. And I often think it's attributable to the fact that we follow the expectations that we think other people have of us because we're so externally driven to get our validation. What are your thoughts on how big a role, if any, that plays?
Well, I think that many women that I've worked with and talked with, and myself included, got to a point or are showing up at a point in their life where they're like, wait a minute, I showed up for my children. I showed up for my career. I showed up for my family and my parents and all these other things. And I forgot to show up for me.
Yes.
And that really affects every area of our lives, because when think about your partner fell in love with you for you, not for what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And your children, their brightest gifts and talents are they're part of you. So that's going to show up in them when you're expressing, maybe you love to do art, or maybe you sing, or whatever it is you really do that's your essence and truth. If you're quieting that and keeping that at bay because it doesn't align with what you're supposed to do, then your children will do the same with their talents and truths.
Yeah, I love
because they model what we do.
Absolutely.
So as you start to show up, your kids will start to show up.
So beautiful. Yeah, I think that's really critical as well. And I talk a lot to women when I speak on this subject too, because I think that's what perpetuates the cycle. For so many women, we believe that we need to, if we're being really honest with ourselves, we sort of wear our martyrdom like a badge of honor, right? Like I'm the super mom and I'm balancing the super career, being a super career woman, and I have 100 balls that I'm juggling at any time. And I always ask them to take a pause and think for your daughters, for example, or the young women out there that you're a role model to. You're basically telling them that their needs will never be as important as any man in their life if you always subjugate your needs to everyone else. And is that what you want for your daughters or for your sons for that matter? And you can see that sort of reframe and shift when it's put that way for women, I think, sometimes. So I love that you address that.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's kind of like happiness. I've had so many people say, I'll be happy when I'm this size, or when I get to this level in my career, or when I make X amount of dollars, or whatever it is. And it's all these beautiful magic moments in between while we're doing all these other things about who we're being and how we show up every day, that's going to really have a lasting effect on our families and our memories, our happiness. So we don't have to depend on that outside situation showing up, because when we're happy now, and obviously we work toward things, we're growing, we're changing, we're always doing self-development and all that. But if we can just be happy in the little things each day, especially this year with all the stress that our families are feeling and we're feeling, just to have fun and play and be happy in the moment, it's going to make all the difference in how we get to the other side of it.
So powerful. I often refer to that as the one-day syndrome as well, right? You hit the nail on the head. When my kids go to school, or then when my kids are growing, or when I have this, or when I hit that target. And it's like, if you're living your life with the one day, as soon as you catch yourself saying, when this, that one day, stop, take a pause, and realign to get yourself grounded in the now, right? So important.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Imagine there I was in that car, that beater car, and I could have been pretty depressed about it.
Yes.
I've always had really nice cars and nice since being a young girl. I went through foster care. I emancipated at 15. I went to college early. I did all these things on my own. So I took pride in earning my own car and all these things, and being dropped down to that level, I was like, okay, it's my mind state. I'm going to be happy right now, even in this beater car, even though I just lost this house. And my clients felt that difference.
Yeah. I could just have this beautiful image of you decorating it with dollar store stickers. I mean, that is such a powerful image. It's so beautiful. What would you say are 3 hot tips that you'd give to our listeners about recreating their life? You've already given us an incredible bunch of value here, Sheila, but if you were going to give us, what would you say are your 3 hot tips, your top tips?
I would say the first one is to really just sit down and think about one situation in your past, write it down, where you went through a tough situation and who you were during that time and who you needed to become or be in order to get back on track. And you'll see that there was a shift that had to take place. And use that power into whatever you need to shift and reinvent now. The second thing is to really sit down and talk about the truth about where things are and what outcomes you want for this year. What truly matters, what we all define as success, can be different. And sometimes we're looking for all the success everybody else tells us we have to have. For us, success would be having fun at the park with the kids, or taking a walk, or having a wonderful time at home. Something really simple that gives us peace and happiness now. And then the third thing would be to remember that as you give yourself time and honor your needs and be in your essence, you are going to be able to show up for everybody else in your home, in your business, in your community in a much better, stronger way. And that strength is what our world needs now. Our world needs you to show up as you.
Holy smokes, people are going to think we rehearsed that. Just so you guys know, that question was a total blindsider for Sheila, and that was a pretty gorgeous answer, my dear. Wow. Love it. Love it. And just wrapping up here on that, what would you say is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you think you've had in your life, Sheila? I mean, it sounds like you've had an incredibly interesting life, and I hope you celebrate yourself and your successes. I mean, coming through the foster system and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, no pun intended, and being able to build a life with such a gorgeous mindset. You should really be super proud of yourself, and I hope you celebrate yourself every day for that. But through all of that vast experience, what would you say is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you'd like to share?
It's that meditation of, in all I'm doing, it's who I'm being. It's how I'm showing up as I'm cleaning my house, walking my puppy, having fun with family and friends, serving my community. It's who I'm being in all I'm doing. It doesn't matter if I'm in a beater car or a little shed or a mansion. It's who am I showing up as? That's the difference.
That is gorgeous. I can't thank you enough. Can't wait. So everybody, again, you got to go and check out that Bootstraps and Bra Straps. And if you want to learn more about Sheila as well, make sure to visit her website at www.sheilamac.com. As Sheila already alluded to as well, make sure to check out her Facebook community. And it's facebook.com/group/Bootstraps Bra Straps, or Instagram at Sheila Mac Show. And I'll make sure to put those in the show notes as well, so you guys can have access to check it out. And do make sure to check out her new book. It's just, I think it sounds brilliant, that Bootstraps and Bra Straps, great title on so many levels, and what a great message for our lives. Thank you for joining us today, Sheila. Really appreciate you being here and with all these really fabulous insights.
Thank you.
And so for the listeners out there, I'm sure you got loads of value from this episode. And if so, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already.
You've been listening to Boardroom to Bedroom with your host, Cindy Watson. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every Monday for more exciting insights and wisdom on how to get more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom.
And also make sure to join
and until
our
next
Women on
time,
Purpose
stop missing out. Negotiate your best life on purpose and with purpose.
Community. And that's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms, so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve, from the boardroom to the bedroom.